In this video, we're going to discuss the near-term news and potential catalysts that two companies I personally own, Base Carbon and Abaxx Technologies, have coming up over the next few months. I'm reminded of something Ian Castle said previously. You might know him as he's a pretty popular personality online in the microcap world, founder of Microcap Club. He's made the point previously that many times you can get a 10-bagger when a company goes from losing 10 cents per share to breaking even to earning 10 cents per share. Focusing on inflection points can take longer than you might expect. For example, Abaxx Technologies thought they were going to launch their exchange in 2021, yet here we are still talking about exchange launch in 2023. But with that said, when a company does achieve its goals, the results can be explosive. And this is the exact situation I think we find ourselves in with Base Carbon and Abaxx Technologies today. Two companies that should start generating revenue soon. However, Base Carbon will likely be cash flow positive before Abaxx will be. So we'll start with Base Carbon's progress, as it'll impact Abaxx as well down the line, and I'll explain that in a minute. But Base Carbon sent out a new press release today, stating that they've had their first VCUs, or verified carbon units, issued from the company's streaming cook stove project in Vietnam, approximately 1 million credits, and there will also be an additional issuance in the near term for the water purifier component of the project. And if you've been following Base Carbon, then you know that the company has an offtake agreement in place with Citigroup, who will purchase the first 7.4 million credits generated from the project. So that process is already underway and will result in Base seeing its first revenue generation in the next couple weeks. Now, if we take 1,020,000 credits, multiply that by the $10 credit assumption price that they used in project estimates, then we'll get $10,200,000 in revenues. Now, it's unclear what price these credits will be sold for to Citigroup because management said they cannot comment on it currently, but it sounds like it's not a set price. And given that credit prices have collapsed due to global economic woes, the credits will likely be sold for a lower price. Even with that being the case, though, this new revenue will be significant for Base, as they've had no revenues up until this point. Now, considering the company lost about $1.1 million in aggregate last quarter, we could see Base Carbon at break-even or even cash flow positive pretty soon here. And clearly, management isn't too worried about cash flow because the company also announced a stock repurchase plan where the company could buy back up to 8.7 million shares, which would be 7% of the stock's float. And we definitely know that management thinks the stock is cheap since 4 insiders have been buying shares in the open market a few weeks ago. So what does this mean for Abaxx? This will contribute to minimizing dilution over at Abaxx as they approach the launch of their new commodity exchange. As Abaxx has a 2.5% royalty on Base Carbon's revenues, so Abaxx will potentially receive around $100,000 or $200,000 in revenues there. And speaking of Abaxx, let's transition and discuss some of the recent events for that company. In their latest PR, Abaxx largely announced things were progressing as planned. Everything's on track to receive full regulatory approval at or near the end of Q2. Now, but of course, all of this is subject to negotiations for the reserve capital and strategic financing with potential exchange partners. They completed full systems integration and everything technical required to receive regulatory approval, fully onboarding their first clearinghouse settlement bank, and signed a collateral management services agreement with DBS Bank Limited, which is Southeast Asia's largest bank by assets. We've seen in previous press releases that the company has been continuously hiring in both executive and lower corporate roles in preparation for launch. One of the largest announcements, in my opinion, was that the nickel contract is seemingly on track to launch at the same time as the LNG and carbon contracts, which are the big three that the company's been focused on so far. And this is pretty big because the nickel market's been begging for an alternative to the London Metal Exchange, who've continuously failed to adequately meet the market's needs. So I would expect that Abaxx can pretty quickly pick up market share in this space when the exchange actually launches. Potentially even faster than the adoption that we might see for Abaxx's LNG contracts. But lastly, as we've seen, Abaxx has been working on uplisting to a larger exchange in the United States, which can provide a variety of benefits for a small company like Abaxx. Better access to capital, potential index inclusion, and institutional interest, which often provide a catalyst for a stock to re-rate, when more intelligent investors at larger institutions can get a crack at these companies. The primary option for Abaxx to uplist to is the NASDAQ, as they have previous connections there, working with the NASDAQ on exchange tech previously, and with Abaxx being a company that will be heavily involved in the technology sector later on. Now, we've seen the company inch closer towards that goal of uplisting with a press release today about consolidation of the float. Abaxx is doing a 1-for-3 reverse split, so the stock price of the OTC listing will go from $1.70 to around $5.10, which puts them at an adequate price range to uplist, as the minimum requirements to go in the NASDAQ are a stock price of at least $4. So we could now see Abaxx uplist in as soon as the next couple of weeks, as they've been preparing the necessary paperwork for quite some time now. And overall, in my opinion, both Abaxx and Base Carbon are very close to major milestones. And it is exactly like I said, when I mentioned what Ian Castle said previously. Both these companies could go from losing millions of dollars per year to break even or even cash flow positive by year end. But we'll see what happens, and it's all very exciting stuff. But yeah, that'll be the end of the video here. If you'd like to learn more about Abaxx or Base Carbon, you can check out the playlist I will link in the description below. Thanks for watching.